I think Dr. Dr. Sunila Garg ma'am will be taking on the role of FOPL. And Dr. Pankaj and Dr. Shiv Joshi have sort of set the stage, and I'll be addressing the emerging endocrine diseases, especially with the focus on use through the awareness on front of package labeling. So I'll just sort of give a brief overview in what Dr. Pankaj had mentioned in his opening remarks with regards to the burden of the diabetic population exploding in India over the next 2 or 3 decades. Even India will sort of be overtaking as the diabetic capital of the world. This is precisely what is going to happen for the reason because there is a difference in the prevalence of diabetes happening in India as compared to the Western population. We know that diabetes and cardiovascular disease are occurring at a much, much younger age as compared to the Western population. And also with improved sort of sanitation, there are less infectious diseases happening, as Dr. Pankaj alluded to. So what is going to happen that all the younger population, which sort of gets into the trap of developing non-communicable diseases, including diabetes or diabesity, diabetes and obesity, they are all going to live longer lives with the conditions of diabetes and obesity. So the burden is going to dramatically increase and these numbers are going to explode. So this is one of the factors. Second, with regards to what we have seen during this COVID pandemic also, the population which was sort of more exposed to a higher morbidity and mortality were the individuals who had an underlying conditions of non-communicable diseases. So patients with diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, chronic kidney disease was the population which sort of fell prey. They had higher mortality, they had higher hospital stays, they were staying more of in the ICUs. So that was another factor. So these people or these individuals with diabetes and obesity are actually going to be predisposed to more and more infectious disease and are more likely to succumb to these. So we need to make our youth aware to stay away from these non-communicable diseases. And the best way to do that is to bringing a societal change into the aspects of preventing these lifestyle disorders by sort of changing our lifestyle habits. And I think what Dr. Pradeep is taking forward and what the government is sort of proposed with regards to front of package labeling is the way forward. So we have this Codex Alimentarius, and I think this will be taken in the subsequent sessions. But what I want to emphasize is that this nutrition information, bringing it from the back to the front, is what will be the key to changing lifestyle habits and people making healthier choices and overall improvement in the nutrition of our youth, which is what is going to lead the change and taking these people away from non-communicable diseases, including the epidemic of diabetes. So what is happening is the health halo effect in the current scenario, where marketers and industry are putting sort of a good part. So maybe there are vitamins there and they'll put those vitamins right in the front and highlight it, while all the aspects which are sort of high cholesterol, high sugars, high salt, they'll be written at the back in small letters. So what makes the youth attracted is the large labels in front, and that's what the health or halo effect, which is driving a lot of our youth to choosing or making unhealthy choices. This is what it looks like, small right at the back. And if we can sort of make this change happen, and that is where FOPL becomes so important, that it will enable our youth to make informed and healthier choices in a timely fashion. It will save a lot of time because we know that it takes a lot of time. And in fact, many people are not able to read those small letters right at the back. So this labeling can actually influence not only the consumers, but also can lead gradually over time to the industry to sort of improve their standards of food, what they are bringing. And with regards to this, especially the nutrient specific warning labels would become so important to highlight the negative aspects of these foods which are there. So that is where we have to keep in mind, and the success or effectiveness would depend on what type of food labeling system we choose, because the youth, we know, get attracted. I mean, it's normal human tendency, not even youth, everybody would get attracted to sort of what is right in the front, large font, attractive fonts, rather than those small letters right at the back. And we just in the last session discussed that youth are sort of aware with regards to multifaceted tasks. They are more prone to bring about change. So bringing food labels which are interpretative for would be also sort of more helpful for these youth. However, we need to keep in mind in India, where people may not be so aware of the various foods and they spend less time in the reading those labels, then maybe non-interpretative food labels can also be incorporated. Now, with regards to the addressing these emerging endocrine disorders, we know that these current ultra-processed foods, they are available increasingly. We know obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease is occurring because of the significant amount of consumption of these ultra-processed food products. We have data from 2016 where 1.9 billion individuals are estimated to have obesity or are overweight. In fact, the NIH randomized controlled trial in 2019 by KD Hall showed that there was increased proportions of this ultra processed food in the diet, which was linked to this increased risk of the pandemics of obesity and diabetes, along with hypertension, stroke, and coronary artery disease. So this was a wide study over 19, covered 19 cohort studies from countries including Europe, the United States, and Brazil. So we have sufficient data, and if we need to sort of prevent the epidemic of these emerging endocrine diseases, we need to encourage the front of package labeling. We need to, in fact, control the marketing and brand promotion of these products with effective front of package labeling. And so that we get a positive brand image, especially for the green manufacturers. And these need to be based on the guiding principles from WHO. There are 5 principles. I'll not go into details because I think Dr. Sunila Garg, madam, would be taking more details on this. But I need to just point out 2 success stories, one from Chile and the other from France, 2 countries across the Atlantic Ocean, one from South America and the other from Europe, where Chile adopted strong mandatory regulations of FOPL in 2012. So they adopted these warning labels of high sugar, sodium, saturated fats, and calories. And this has already shown significant shift in social norms and attitudes towards purchasing nutritious foods, because the labeling system is relatively simple, and this impacts people across different socioeconomic strata and education levels. And in fact, it has led to manufacturers reformulating some of their products based on consumer preferences. So people are now aware, and this has been a success story in Chile. Similarly, in France, where 2017, this voluntary FOPL system, they used the Nutri-Score rather than the warning labels. And they had positive scores for fruits, vegetables, nuts, fibers, and proteins, while negative labels for calories, sugar, fats, sugars, and sodium. And this has also been a relatively success story, and this has been endorsed in France, Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Spain. So the other European countries have joined in, and it's been found to be effective for educating and informing the nutritionally at-risk individuals. So some of these success stories are already there. And India, where we just discussed that 1/3 of the population is youth. So this would be very effective because India is at the cusp of a food packaging revolution where retail plus the agribusiness have already created full vertical integration of the food value chain, and urban and rural poor across, they are consuming these increased amounts of processed foods, and the consumption of these foods is being backed by billions of rupees which are spent on marketing. So this drives the youth being attracted to these foods. So if we can change the marketing or control the marketing and bring on mandatory FOPL in local languages or image based, this would actually encourage consumers and encourage industry. So we need to involve academia and groups, and today's session is an effective step in continuation to the previous ones to sort of add to this. The challenges are immense with regards to Indian diversity, food industry, which pushes back. The hesitancy for policymakers is gradually waning, and we are on the cusp of taking effective steps in India. There is, however, a subtle consumer pushback. So how can we sort of affect this? Because we know Indians have a sweet tooth. If we see the sugar consumption in the US, and if you look at, say, the 19th century and we look at now, we see the tremendous increase in consumption which has happened. And if we look at growth in Asia, we see that India tops the list with annual growth of 4%, where the world sugar consumption grows at 2%. And India's domestic sugar consumption requirement is touching around 30 million tons. So free sugars is what we need to avoid, sucrose predominantly, but there are other naturally present sugars, including honey, syrups, and fruits. Sucrose, which is the common table sugar, has taken over with the advent of industrialization and because of the consumption of processed foods. So this added sugars versus natural sugars is the biggest difference which we need to target for our youth and make aware for them this big difference which is there. In fact, the American Heart Association has sort of given a guideline with regards to maximum amount of sugar consumption. And this is for teaspoon sugar, not the usual tablespoon which we have. So it's 9 teaspoons per day for men and 6 teaspoons for women. But if you look at the drinks available all across, even one drink sort of leads to 4 to 6 to even 9 teaspoons. So just consumption of one drink, such drink. And it's not only these the original soft drinks, but you even have these sugary milk-based drinks, sort of promoted as healthy drinks. All across the board, they contain high amounts of sugar. So in fact, sugar is now it's the new cigarettes. It increases insulin, which increases fat storage, and it has been found to be addictive. In fact, in an animal study, 93% of lab rats chose sugar water over cocaine. That's how addictive it is. So that's what we need to keep in mind. Right. So if we look, these were PET images which were done. It was seen that they lit up to the same amount as the brain of cocaine addicted individuals. So that's how addictive it is. In fact, one interesting thing, I put an image here. This was from Sri Lanka. The organizers there for a conference had put out these sugar pouches everywhere. So this was an innovative way of creating awareness that sugar is addictive and causes diabetes. So these sort of innovative steps can be taken up everywhere. This is another from the Boston Public Health, the traffic light sort of system, where they say they have highlighted drinks with red, yellow, and then in green we find water predominantly or skimmed milk. This was our data which we had presented at the International Diabetes Federation in Dubai, where we found that reducing free sugars and moving to these non-nutritive sweeteners actually impacted taste. And we know that we as Indians are addicted to sort of taste, especially sugar, salt being added on, and lack of taste becomes the biggest impediment. And when the policymakers sort of, or the industry switches to healthier foods, that is the biggest challenge of how to sort of bring the youth to choosing healthier foods without their taste becoming affected, because that's the biggest impediment for switching over to that. In fact, over the world, and this is from the US, we find that obesity has continuously increased despite increasing consumption of non-nutritive sweeteners. So even when patient or individuals population switched from sugars to non-nutritive sweeteners, the obesity persistently increased. And this is because with the use of non-nutritive sweeteners, they were consuming a lot of ultra-processed foods which contain a lot of fat and other calories, so which sort of compensated for it. So I'll just sort of summarize here as to the challenges, because eating becomes an individual choice which gets influenced by individual consumers based on taste and food marketing. And we know that food industry gets driven by profits, and their aim is to hook consumers on tastier foods, even if it means the ingredients are unhealthy. So high amount of salt, sugar, fat, which is making the food tastier. So doesn't sort of, I mean, they're looking at profits only, but ultimately it deprives our youth of their money, health, and freedom to choose the right food. And they sort of become manipulated by the taste, marketing, and that's where the choice gets sort of misdirected. So we need to incentivize the consumers, bring in strong marketing controls, effective front of package labeling. We need to avoid this stealth and overt reformulation which marketers bring. So lots of vitamins, but lots of fats and sugars, and involve public-private partnership to give the right direction. In fact, this is Richard Thaler and Cass Sunstein. They brought out a book on nudging, nudge. So using the ideas of nudging can be a way forward to direct a youth to the right path. Nudges, in fact, are very low cost interventions and generate less resistance from consumers. We had nudge advisors to Barack Obama and to the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And Richard Thaler has also won the Nobel Prize in 2017. So that could be an effective way forward to sort of encourage the youth, direct the youth to choosing healthier options. So I'll end here. Thank you. Thank you for a patient hearing.